movement this week. I'm going to start with the CCNA issue with the universities. Last week, I was the news was pretty dire, and it's still not great, but we're in better shape than we were last week. After the call last week, Friday afternoon, I got a call from John that said that they had put the language exempting the universities on House Bill 1259, which is really a bill that deals with charter school funding. And an amendment had dropped Friday afternoon that took that language back out. So the current situation in the House is there's no bill with any language on it to exempt the universities. The Senate has it in Senate Bill 7026, which is, as you can see on the report, higher education finance bill. And these are bills that have to pass. I mean, it's the funding for universities and in the House's case, charter schools and stuff. But that the House doesn't have to agree to that. So at least we're back in the position of asking the House to stand firm and to not accept that language and take it out during the conference committee meetings that are going to happen here over the next couple of weeks, leading to the final budget. So we're in better shape than we were, but we're still definitely not out of the woods. There's every week it seems like there's another player, high level player involved, and the new one for us this week is Will Weatherford, who's the president of the Florida State University Board of Trustees and a former Speaker of the House. So it's a formidable group, and they've got a lot of power. So we're going to do everything we can. We did not offer last week. CLGR met, and we decided if it comes to it that we would offer to raise the thresholds on CCNA, because the base thresholds is $35,000 for studies and $325,000 for construction. So those haven't been adjusted for a long time. So we were going to offer that, and then if this bill's going to pass, we'd also like to see a study done in about say 4 years, give the projects a little bit of time, because if all of our studies from ACEC National are correct, they're going to see it fairly quickly. That they get more change orders, that they the construction costs rise, those types of things, and it would we could go back, say in 4 years, and have a study done by OPAGA, which is the research arm of the Florida legislature, I think is what they call themselves, but have them take a look at it and see if we're seeing those same things, and try to bring it back the other way. It would also give us the chance, if the local governments come next year looking to get out of CCNA, it would give us some cover to say, hey, let's wait for the study, and then let it develop from there. So again, we're in better shape than we were last week, but still not out of the woods. And I know I was talking to John last night, and I know they're still working hard on it and trying to get the House leadership to say no to this language when they meet in the budget conferences. So we'll report more on that next week. Unfortunately, it's not going to go away. Also in the budget, we're looking at Senate Bill 2500. That's got the language in there for FDOT and the Moving Florida Forward program. I know this is part of my conversation with John last night. We're going to really dig into that now as we're getting into budget time. Not sure exactly what the feelings are, inside the legislature on this one. The ask is for $4 billion, which can be leveraged then into $7 billion. I think there's roughly about 20 projects they've identified that they would use that money for. The current language in the bill gives, it says the first of 2 installments of $2 billion, but it doesn't say when the second installment would come. And FDOT needs that in order to leverage it. So we'll be working on that and trying to get that fixed. There is, some definite blowback starting, with the governor. A lot of it has to do with the new stuff with Disney, which doesn't affect us. It just, some of the legislators are, kind of getting tired of taking on these big controversial issues like this, and just seemingly having them forced on them. So, I don't know if they're going to be willing to play ball with him or not on the budget. So, at least for this program, but again, we'll do what we can and see what we can do to help there. The next couple of bills are for the next version of what I just call the Surfside bill, the bills that came along in response to Surfside that require inspections in condos. And as you can see, we've got. I think I reported last week. We got that all settled, over in the House. They have some language in there that would allow general contractors and local building inspectors to do the phase 1 inspections, which we were against, and that language has been removed. I think everything is smooth sailing on this one now. They did get it through the Commerce Committee earlier this week in the House. It's ready for action on the floor of the House. It's already passed the Senate. It's sitting in messages to the House. So I think what'll happen there when the House brings this bill up on the floor, they will just set theirs on the table and they'll take up the Senate bill and pass it out, and it'll be on its way to the governor. So that's good. We're having trouble with the next couple of bills. This universal recognition occupational licensing. We have submitted language a couple of times to the senator. Senator Collins is the main person on this bill. I think the House will just do whatever wherever the Senate finally lands. But it looks like something's going to pass. So he won't let us out of the bill. We've tried several times, but the last meeting occurred a couple of days ago with him. He agreed to some language that he's also agreed to for doctors and lawyers and accountants. That really, to be honest with you, it just says the same thing that current law says. It just says it a little differently. But it would keep intact all of all the rules and criteria that has to be met in order to get a PE license today. So I'm not sure. I know the people behind this is Americans for Prosperity. They do this around the country. They're very anti-regulatory, very anti-license. But our case is, look, we're not hair braiders and we're not cosmetologists. These are engineers, and they design big innovative things: roads, bridges, wastewater systems, energy systems. You name it. You guys know what you do, and what this industry does, and we don't need it. Basically, the latest language said something to the effect that if you meet 2 out of the 3 criteria, so the three criteria for engineers is, education. You have to have a Bachelor of Science degree in engineering from an accredited university. You can get a license if you have a degree from a university that's not accredited, but that requires 15 years of experience, something like that. So you can do it, but the main rule is that you have to have the Bachelor of Science degree. You then have to pass the fundamentals test and the PE exam, and you have to have 4 years of experience. And they're saying if you meet 2 out of 3, well, which one is the best one to skip over? If somebody's coming from another state or even another country, do you nix the education if they don't have a degree, or they don't pass the test, or they don't have any experience? I mean, our argument is kind of which one of these isn't needed. And so I think he agreed to that. Although I would say, it seemingly about 3 times he's agreed to stuff and then rejects the language when we send it to him. But we're locked arm in arm, as we are on CCNA. We're locked arm in arm with the architects, and they're in the meetings with our folks, and in addition to landscape architects and the mappers and surveyors. So it's a team working on it, and a lot of good people working on our side, and hopefully, we can get that to where the impacts are minimal, if there's any impacts at all. And I'm not sure, just another little to add on that, you'll notice House Bill 1333 has not gotten through the Commerce Committee yet. The staff of the Commerce Committee are very experienced legislative staff, and they have a lot of sway and a lot of input, a lot of influence on the legislation that goes through the Commerce Committee, and they hate this bill. And so, it's possible that this bill, in the end won't pass, but we have to go based on the assumption today that something will pass, and so we need to limit any impacts on our industry as we move forward. Still also has one committee in the Senate, so hopefully they'll meet next week, and we'll be able to get the changes that we need, so that we can all be comfortable with that. Those are really the big ones, that we're working hardest on. We still are watching very closely. Jeff will go into more detail in his presentation at 9:25, but I still have these bills on there for the rulemaking for DEP. Again, if anybody's new, this bill does not contain the latest wastewater or the stormwater rule, but it would be a good place for it to go. But I also understand DEP is shopping around, seeing if they can get a committee to put out a bill. Bills can't be filed at this point, but a committee can take a bill and change it and put it forth as a committee bill. That they're shopping that, trying to get this rule ratified, and so we're watching for that. They're also poking around, asking, well, we have a final rule, but it's not ratified. So can we, can we enforce the rule? And the answer to that is no, you can't. It has to be ratified. And then they're also asking, Dora, I got to kind of laugh at this one. They're asking if we would agree to ratification of the bill, where the legislature would require changes to the rule. And no, we're not going to agree to changes that we don't know what they are, and have them set in stone in legislation. So all indications are is that this rule will not be ratified this year, but just they keep poking. So we'll stay on top of that, and as we move forward. The next couple of bills are transportation bills. These were a big deal early on. They had the language in there about phase design build and some other things that they took out, and they're running them kind of in tandem, or trying to in tandem with their requests for funding for moving Florida forward. The one thing that this has in it, and the reason I keep it on there, is it has the language in there that during a project, if the design team or the CEI or the contractor finds ways to save money, that the engineers and the contractors would share in those savings. Whatever the savings are, 50% of it would go to DOT, and then the other 50% would kind of be dispersed on a weighted average, depending on what percentage of the contract the engineer has and the contractor has. So could allow that. It's not something that we're pushing real hard for, but it's not a bad thing. And so, but this bill has sat still for several weeks, to the point where I almost took it off the report. But it moved this week in the House. It's on their special order calendar, which means they're gonna bring it up. What they do is when it first goes to the House, they call it the special order calendar, or you'll hear people refer to it as the bill on second reading. They'll bring the bill up, and at that point, it to what they call third reading. That's final passage. You're not supposed to put amendments on it at that point, although they do sometimes. But that's final passage. That's when they debate the bill and take the final vote. So it's moving again, so that's good. There's nothing in there that's bad for us, and something that's a little bit good. So we'll take it in this year. And then finally, the two bills that have passed. The statute of repose bill was sent to the governor and has already been signed by the governor, so that's a law now. That moves the statute of repose from 10 years to 7 years. Does a few other things, but that's the big part of that bill, and so that's good for the folks that have to deal in with that type of liability. And then the fire sprinkler system projects that we've talked about has been passed and is waiting on action for the governor. I do have the letter prepared asking the governor veto that bill. We think engineers should have to sign off on alterations to an existing fire sprinkler system. And it wasn't done correctly in the House or in the Senate. They had told us, from the get-go that they would not accept that language, and then turned around and did. So at the last minute, I mean, it came over from the House with that language on it, and they just accepted the House bill and went. So that particular issue was never discussed in the Senate, and that by any committee or anyone, and that's not the way this is supposed to work. So we are going to ask the governor for a veto on that one. And that's kind of it from my side. I don't see any hands, but Laura, if you see any, have any questions?
Not yet. No. Anybody?
So my explanations were clear and concise, I guess.
Perfect, Alan. Call it a day.
Which is surprising, because I'm confused by this legislature. It's been a strange session, and it's still got 2 weeks to go. So it's been an interesting one.
Alan, this is JW. I had a question. The Lieutenant Governor held a press conference the end of last week supporting the $4 billion for FDOT. Has there been any discussion or any reaction to that press conference by the legislature, or did that pretty much go unnoticed?
I think the latter. I don't think they paid much attention to it, although, I have to believe that, that's an indication that something isn't right, because otherwise I don't think they'd go out and go public like that. It's a big ask. It's $4 billion. They've already, the work plan for DOT next year is already in the budget at about $13.5 billion, which is a good level of funding for the work plan. So this is in addition to that, as you know, JW. And it's a big ask. So, but we'll see. I take it as, I don't think they're in panic mode or anything. I've always understood that this is going to be okay in the end. I kind of thought it was, they hadn't done it exactly the way the governor wanted it, so that they could use it as a bargaining chip at some point in the process. And that might still be the case. But it does show me that, there is some concern for it, inside the governor's office.
Alan, we have a question about the sovereign immunity bills, House Bill 401, Senate Bill 604.
Yeah, I pulled those off the report because they just haven't moved. It's never gotten a committee hearing in the Senate. It got 1 or 2 in the House, and then stalled from there. So I've taken that one off. I don't think we're going to hear of that one again.
Thank you. Anybody else?
All right. Well, I certainly appreciate everyone joining this morning, and we'll continue to hope for better news for next week. And we'll be here at 8:30 next Friday.
Alan, I'm assuming we don't need a CLGR meeting.
Oh, you know what, Peter? No, I don't have anything new. So Laura, if you would send out and cancel that meeting for me.
Will do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.